Congratulations, genius. You woke up thinking you'd be a nurse in medieval times. What a brilliant idea. Nothing could possibly go wrong, right? It's like deciding to be a swimming instructor on the Titanic or a safety consultant at Chernobyl. You arrive at your new workplace, an establishment that dares to call itself a hospital, but looks more like the set of a D-grade horror movie. The sign at the entrance should read, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here." But since nobody can read anyway, they just drew a skull with charcoal. How welcoming. Master Benedict, your new boss, greets you at the door. He looks like someone who survived 3 plagues, 4 wars, and at least 15 bouts of dysentery. The teeth left in his mouth are on a hunger strike, and his beard seems to house an entire family of lice. "Ah, another brave soul," he exclaims, looking you up and down like he's evaluating how long you'd last. Spoiler alert, not very long. He leads you through the cutting-edge medical facility, which basically consists of a main room where people are cheerfully dying on piles of straw that were white sometime before Christ was born, a back room full of tools that would make an Inquisition torturer proud, and a bathroom that, well, let's just say you'll prefer to hold it for the next few months. "Here are our VIP patients," says Benedict, pointing to 15 poor souls squeezed into a space that would be cramped for 5 people. They're all lying on straw that has definitely seen better days, probably when it was still in the field being actual straw, not this sticky, stinking substance that now serves as a mattress. The room's ventilation is provided by a window that appears to have been opened by someone who had no clue what a window was. The result is an irregular hole in the wall through which flies, mosquitoes, and occasionally some lost bird enters, immediately regretting the decision. You're introduced to your first patient, Johnny Smith, a peasant who's had a headache for 3 days. "Ah, simple case," you think naively, until Benedict explains that the standard treatment is drilling a little hole in the poor guy's head to air out the brain and scare away the evil demons. He proudly shows you the tool, a drill that looks more like a giant rusty corkscrew. "We have a fantastic success rate," he announces. "Almost 12% of patients wake up after the procedure." 12%. What an encouraging statistic. The other 88% presumably go straight to chat with St. Peter about the innovative methods of medieval medicine. Your daily duties include changing bandages, filthy rags that are reused until they literally disintegrate, preparing medications, basically sketchy-tasting water with herbs that may or may not be poisonous, serving nutritious meals, a gray goop that defies the laws of physics by remaining liquid and solid at the same time, and the cherry on top, emptying the sanitary containers. Ah, yes, the famous communal buckets. 3 buckets for 15 people. You do the math and realize it doesn't add up well. But don't worry. When they overflow, the problem solves itself by flowing across the dirt floor. Benedict hands you your professional uniform, a leather apron that clearly belonged to several previous nurses, all probably resting in peace, literally. The leather has a color that originally must have been brown, but is now an indefinable shade that modern scientists would call brown rot with notes of despair. "I'm absolutely certain you'll be different from the others," Benedict declares with conviction. "The last nurse set a record. He lasted an impressive 4 whole days. 4 days. Wow. Practically a veteran of the profession. Your main work tool? A collection of fat, satisfied leeches living in a cracked clay pot. They're responsible for balancing bodily humors, a revolutionary medical theory that basically says, if you're sick, remove more blood until you get better, or die, whichever comes first. And so, Dear future ex-nurse, you embark on the most epic and suicidal adventure of your medieval existence. Where medicine is based on assumptions, hygiene is optional, and you definitely should have chosen to be a turnip farmer instead. If you made it through the first chapter without totally losing your mind, smash that like button and subscribe to see if you've got what it takes to survive the next 14 days of medieval medicine. Drop a comment telling us which medieval scientific method blew your mind the most. I guarantee you won't be able to pick just one. Welcome to your second day at work. You survived the first night, which already puts you in the top 3% of most experienced medieval nurses in the region. Congratulations, champ. Now get ready to learn the ancient secrets of medieval medical diagnostic arts. Master Benedict arrives super pumped in the morning, carrying a thick book that looks like it was written with bat blood on dead goat parchment. Today, you'll learn our revolutionary scientific diagnostic methodology, he announces proudly, as if he's about to present the cure for cancer. Spoiler alert, he's not. You sit on a wobbly stool while he opens the sacred book of medieval medicine. The first page has a drawing of a man with his head split open, showing tiny little devils dancing inside his brain. How scientific. Rule number 1, Benedict declares solemnly, every disease has only 3 possible causes: demons, evil eye, or imbalanced bodily humors. Simple as that. Simple indeed. Who needs years of medical school when you have this brilliant explanation that literally solves everything? You definitely didn't need that 7-year degree you were planning to get. Benedict continues, let's start with humor analysis. The human body has 4 essential humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. When they're out of whack, people get sick. He shows you a diagram that looks like it was drawn by a 5-year-old with motor coordination issues. According to this anatomical masterpiece, blood stays in the liver, wrong, phlegm in the brain, super wrong, and bile dances around the belly in random places, completely delusional. How do we identify the imbalance, you ask, still trying to maintain some hope in the medical competence of this place? Very sophisticated methods, Benedict replies. First, we observe skin color. If it's pale, there's a lack of hot blood. If it's red, excess hot blood. If it's yellow, bile problems. If it's blue, obviously demons are sucking out the soul. Perfect. A diagnostic system that works with any skin color and always has an explanation. It's almost like astrology, but worse. What if the person has normal skin color, you dare to ask? Impossible, he exclaims. Healthy people don't come to the hospital, duh. If they came here, it's because something is out of balance. The logic is irrefutable. Bizarre, but irrefutable. Benedict takes you to the first patient of the day, Mrs. Betty, an elderly lady complaining of back pain. Observe, he whispers dramatically. We're going to make a complete diagnosis. He approaches the poor woman and announces, first, let's analyze the urine. Betty looks confused while Benedict grabs a foggy glass flask. Urine tells us everything about internal humors. He holds the flask up to the window light and makes a face like he's deciphering the secrets of the universe. Slightly yellowish color, somewhat cloudy texture, warm temperature. You watch fascinated as he literally smells the contents of the flask. Yes, smells it, like he's some medieval urine sommelier. Diagnosis, he declares triumphantly. Excess yellow bile causing lower back heating, probably triggered by jealousy of some younger neighbor. Betty gets indignant. What jealousy? I hurt my back carrying a wheat sack. That's exactly what someone with excess yellow bile would say. Benedict retorts, as if he just solved a Sherlock Holmes case. You're starting to suspect that maybe, just maybe, this diagnostic system isn't 100% reliable. The next patient is Cabbage Joe, who came complaining of a cough. "Classic case," exclaims Benedict. "Let's do the saliva test." He asks Joe to spit into a wooden bowl and analyzes the result with the seriousness of a nuclear scientist. Excessive foam, transparent color, abundant quantity. Demons! Demons, you ask, genuinely curious about this advanced methodology? Of course, when there's foam in saliva, it means demons are making foam inside the lungs to drown the Christian soul. Cabbage Joe looks terrified. You look incredulous. Benedict looks proud of his own genius. How do you know it's demons and not excess phlegm? You insist, still trying to understand the logic. Simple, Benedict responds. If it were phlegm, the foam would be thicker. Demon foam is always thinner and more treacherous. Of course, the consistency of demonic foam versus common phlegm. How didn't you think of that before? The third patient of the day is little Johnny, who has a fever. Here we have a classic case of evil eye. Benedict diagnoses before even examining the child. How do you know? Asks the worried mother. Children only get sick for 3 reasons. Evil eye from a witch, divine punishment for disobedience, or because they ate demonic food. Benedict explains with the conviction of someone who memorized a manual. He approaches the boy and does a complete examination. Looks at the tongue, feels the forehead, checks the palms, and smells the child's breath. Confirmed! Evil eye from an envious witch. The breath smells like disguised sulfur. The mother gets desperate. What do I do? Triple treatment? Bloodletting to remove poisoned blood, garlic poultice on the feet to ward off bad energies, and 3 Hail Marys at midnight facing east. You observe this medical consultation and begin to understand why medieval life expectancy was approximately 25 years. And so, my dear apprentice nurse, you discover that medieval medicine is based on a revolutionary system where any symptom can be explained by demons, unbalanced humors, or evil eye, and treatment always involves removing blood from people who are already weak. What could possibly go wrong? 3rd day on the job, and you're still breathing. This officially makes you a living legend in the world of medieval nursing. Today, you'll discover the secrets of advanced pharmacology of the era, the ancient art of mixing random ingredients and praying the patient doesn't die faster than they were already dying. Master Benedict leads you to the hospital's pharmaceutical laboratory, a dark little corner in the back where cracked clay pots, foggy flasks, and an impressive collection of ingredients that would give Gordon Ramsay nightmares are stored. "Welcome to our state-of-the-art pharmacy," he announces proudly, pointing to wobbly shelves filled with substances that definitely violate several laws of nature and common sense. You observe the available ingredients: coagulated bat blood, powdered saint bone, which you suspect is ground pig bone, dried herbs that look more like dead leaves from the backyard, virgin urine, don't ask how they get this, howling wolf bile, lonely widow tears, and the premium ingredient, unicorn dung. Spoiler alert, unicorns don't exist, so you don't even want to know what animal provided that stinking brown substance. "Let's start with something simple," says Benedict, grabbing a recipe book that looks like it survived Noah's flood. "Headache potion, recipe number 1. He reads solemnly, "Mix 3 drops of bat blood, a pinch of powdered saint bone, 5 leaves of demon weed, fresh Catholic virgin urine, and finish with a prayer to Saint Benedict." You look at him, expecting the punchline. It doesn't come. That's right, he continues excitedly. The urine needs to be specifically from a Catholic virgin because Protestant virgin urine doesn't have adequate healing properties. Of course, everyone knows that religion directly affects the chemical composition of female urine. How silly of you not to pay attention in medieval biotheology classes. Benedict teaches you to prepare the first potion. You grab the bat blood, which has the consistency of old jello, and try to mix it with the urine, which has a smell that defies description. The result is a purple substance that bubbles on its own and emits greenish vapor. Perfect, exclaims Benedict. It's bubbling. That means the healing spirits are activated. Or it means you just created a medieval chemical weapon. But who cares about details? What are the herbs for, you ask, trying to understand some logic in this process. Ah, each herb has specific properties, he explains. Demonweed scares away demons, obviously. St. George's leaf protects against evil eye. Dragonroot increases courage. And holy grass, well, holy grass makes everything more holy. The logic is irrefutable. Naming random herbs with mystical names automatically gives them magical powers. Why didn't anyone think of this before? The next medication on the menu is a wound ointment. Ancestral recipe from my great-grandmother, Benedict boasts. Rancid pig fat, burned wood ashes, old honey, and black cat hair. Black cat hair, you question? Of course. Black cats absorb negative energies. The hair carries this property and helps expel evil infections from wounds. You watch him mix all ingredients in a wooden bowl using a spoon that definitely hasn't been washed since the Crusades. The result is a dark brown paste that looks like... Well, you don't want to think about what it looks like. It's ready, he announces triumphantly. Miraculous ointment for wounds. Success rate of almost 15%. 15%. The other 85% presumably die from infection, but at least they die with artisanal ointment. Then comes Mrs. Martha, a peasant woman with a skin rash. I need something for this terrible itching, she begs. Benedict consults his sacred book. Ah, yes, demonic eruption. Let's prepare the purifying bath. He starts separating ingredients. Holy water, which is regular water in a bowl he blessed with a hand wave. Coarse salt, just regular salt. Rue leaves, which may or may not be poisonous. And the special ingredient, 3 drops of his own sweat. Sweat? You ask incredulously. Healer's sweat, he clarifies. Contains mystical properties absorbed through years of medical experience. In other words, regular sweat from a guy who hasn't bathed in months, but now with mystical properties. Benedict prepares the bath in a cracked wooden basin. The water turns a questionable color and smells like a mix of old church and abandoned chicken coop. Bathe 3 times a day for 7 days, he prescribes to Martha. And don't forget to say 1 Our Father for each body part you dip in the water. Martha leaves happy with her medical prescription, while you wonder how many days she'll last before dying from poisoning or generalized infection. The last patient of the morning is Johnny Smith, who suffers from chronic insomnia. I have the perfect solution, declares Benedict, consulting an especially stained page of the book. Eternal Dreams Tea, mandrake root, red poppy petals, whiskers from a cat that never meowed, and tears of a happy child. You watch as he prepares this dubious recipe. The mandrake root looks suspicious and probably toxic. The poppy petals are moldy, the whiskers are clearly rat hair, and the happy child tears are drops of a transparent substance of questionable origin. Take 3 sips before bed, he instructs Johnny. I guarantee you'll have the best dreams of your life. Or go straight to the afterlife. But at least it'll be relaxing. Johnny drinks the tea right in front of you. The taste must be horrible because he makes a face suggesting he just licked a stable floor. But he thanks politely and stumbles out. Done! Benedict hands you a stained apron. Now you know how to prepare our 3 most effective medications. Tomorrow, we'll learn about surgery. Surgery. Using the same scientific techniques as medieval pharmacy. You look around the pharmaceutical laboratory, cracked pots, dubious ingredients, recipes based on pure superstition, and begin to understand why medieval life expectancy was so low. And so, my dear medieval pharmacy apprentice, you discovered that medicine of the era worked on a simple system. Mix random ingredients, give them mystical names, pray a lot, and hope the patient is tough enough to survive their own treatment. What a wonderful healthcare system. 4th day on the job, and you still have all your fingers. That's already more than most of your predecessors managed. Today's the big day. You're going to learn medieval surgery. Get ready to discover why surgeons back then had an even lower life expectancy than their patients. Master Benedict arrives in the morning carrying a wooden box that creaks ominously. Today, you'll meet our cutting-edge surgical instruments, he announces, with the enthusiasm of someone showing an iPhone to a caveman. He opens the box, and you're faced with a collection of tools that look more like they were borrowed from a retired torturer. There's a rusty saw that must have cut more firewood than bones, a hammer that definitely saw previous duty in construction, dull knives that couldn't cut warm butter, and the premium item, a giant pair of pliers that definitely had a previous life pulling nails from old boards. Beautiful, aren't they? Asks Benedict proudly, like he's showing off crown jewels. Some of these instruments have been in my family for generations. Generations, meaning they've never been sharpened, cleaned, or sterilized since they were forged by some drunk blacksmith in the 12th century. How does anesthesia work? You ask innocently, still maintaining some hope in medieval humanity. Benedict looks at you, confused. What now? Anesthesia, so patients don't feel pain during surgery. He laughs like you just told the world's funniest joke. Oh, you mean the stick method? The stick method? Of course. We put a piece of wood in the patient's mouth to bite down on. Very effective. Keeps them from screaming too loud and scaring the other patients. How considerate. Medieval anesthesia literally consists of giving the patient a stick to bite, while you saw them alive. Florence Nightingale must be rolling in her grave. What if the patient passes out from pain, you insist? Even better. It's easier to operate when they stop moving around. The logic is flawless, brutally flawless. Then arrives your first surgical patient, Crooked Leg Pete, a lumberjack who hurt his leg in a fall. Simple case, declares Benedict. Amputation. Amputation, you question. But isn't the leg just broken? Broken, infected, what's the difference? It's easier to cut it off and pray another one grows back. Grows back, like legs or baby teeth. Benedict prepares the surgical center. A stained wooden table that was probably used for cutting meat at the butcher shop, covered with a cloth that must have been white sometime before the invention of dirt. First, let's prep the patient, he announces solemnly. The preparation consists of giving Pete 3 gulps of cheap moonshine, which is more anesthesia than he's going to get, tying him to the table with ropes, because apparently patients have the inconvenient habit of wanting to escape during surgery, and placing the famous stick in his mouth. Ready! Patient anesthetized and prepped. Crooked Leg Pete stares at you both with eyes wide with pure terror. You don't blame him. Benedict grabs the rusty saw and examines it critically. It's kind of dull. Can you hold the leg while I cut? You can hold the leg while he cuts with a dull saw without anesthesia. Wouldn't it be better to sharpen the saw first? You suggest timidly. We don't have time. The patient might die of anxiety or septic shock caused by a generalized infection from dirty instruments, but who cares about medical details? You hold Pete's leg, who's sweating more than a marathon runner in the desert, while Benedict starts sawing. The sound is horrible. Half saw grinding against bone, half Pete trying to scream through the stick in his mouth. Going great, comments Benedict cheerfully, like he's cutting a piece of cheese. Just about 10 more minutes of sawing. 10 minutes with a dull saw. You watch Pete getting paler and paler and start mentally calculating his chances of surviving the procedure. Spoiler alert, they're not good. After 15 minutes of medieval torture disguised as surgery, the leg finally separates from the body. Benedict raises the amputated limb like a trophy. Done! Successful surgery. Successful. Pete is unconscious, bleeding like a broken fountain, and probably developing an infection that'll kill him in 3 days. But the surgery was successful. Now what? You ask, watching blood drip from the table. Now we sew it up, declares Benedict, grabbing a regular sewing needle and thread that looks like it was pulled from an old rope. You can go get more sticks. We have 3 more surgeries today. 3 more. Your day is just getting started. The next patient is Mrs. Betty, who needs a wart removed from her arm. Delicate surgery, explains Benedict. We'll use the cauterization method. Cauterization. He grabs a cattle branding iron, puts it in the fire until it's red hot, and announces, "We're going to burn the wart off." Wouldn't it be simpler to cut it with a small knife, you suggest? Impossible. Fire purifies, kills all the wart demons. Wart demons. Of course, because warts are obviously caused by microscopic demons that can only be killed with red-hot iron. Mrs. Betty sees the glowing iron approaching her arm and faints preemptively. Great, comments Benedict. Natural anesthesia. The smell of burning flesh fills the room as he literally brands the poor woman's arm like she's cattle. You wonder if you should have pursued a career in agriculture. The third patient is more dramatic. Wonky-eyed Joe arrived with an eye infection. I'll show you a very advanced technique, says Benedict, grabbing a rusty spoon. Complete ocular removal. Complete removal? Can't we treat the infection? Of course not. Infected eye contaminates the brain. Better remove it right away. Medieval medical logic. When in doubt, amputate. Eye, leg, arm, head, anything causing problems can simply be removed. Wonky-Eye Joe, who would soon be One-Eye Joe, tries to run, but you manage to hold him down on the table. Benedict approaches his eye with the spoon like he's serving ice cream. Hold tight, he instructs. If the eye slips out, it might fall on the floor, and the dogs will eat it. How pragmatic! Concern about organ waste in an era of food scarcity. After another half-hour of procedures that would make a butcher nauseous, you finish the surgical day. 3 patients operated on. 1 unconscious amputee, 1 woman with a burned arm, and 1 man with a gouged-out eye socket. Productive day, declares Benedict, cleaning the instruments in a bowl of dirty water that was probably used to wash dishes. Predicted survival rate, almost 20%. 20%. The other 80% will die from infection, shock, or despair. But at least they received specialized medical treatment. And so, my dear medieval surgery apprentice, you discovered that surgery of the era worked on a simple principle. When in doubt, cut it off. No anesthesia, no sterilization, no anatomical knowledge, just lots of courage from the surgeon, lots of faith from the patient, and lots of luck from everyone involved. Tomorrow, you'll learn about hospital hygiene. Get ready to discover why that phrase is a medieval oxymoron. 5th day on the job, and you still haven't died from any contagious diseases. This officially qualifies you as a walking medical miracle. Today, you'll discover the revolutionary concepts of medieval hygiene, or rather, the complete absence of them. Get ready to understand why life expectancy back then was shorter than a pet hamster's. You arrive in the morning and immediately notice something's different in the air. Actually, nothing's different at all. It still stinks like always. But today, Master Benedict decided to give you a special lesson on hospital sanitation. Let's talk about cleanliness, he announces proudly, like he's about to reveal the secrets of the universe. You look around the hospital and wonder if he's serious or having a psychotic episode. The dirt floor is covered by a layer of straw that has definitely housed at least 15 generations of rats, lice, fleas, and other creatures you'd rather not identify. The wooden walls have stains of dubious origin that form maps of imaginary continents, and the ceiling drips a brown substance that's definitely not rainwater. First hygiene lesson, declares Benedict solemnly. Dirt protects against diseases. Protects against diseases. You blink several times thinking you heard wrong, but he continues. You know why, my young apprentice? Because disease demons don't like really dirty places. They prefer clean environments to settle in. The logic is simply genius. The filthier the place, the more protected against demons. That's why people living in sewers never get sick, right? Right? And how do we maintain this protection, you ask, trying not to breathe through your mouth? Very simple. We never wash the floor, never change the straw, and never, ever clean the walls. The accumulated dirt forms a mystical barrier against evil forces. Mystical barrier? The layer of slime on the floor isn't negligence. It's advanced spiritual military strategy. Benedict takes you to the treatment area, where patients lie. The straw thereon is so soaked with various bodily fluids that it literally goes squish when you step on it. Some patients have been there for weeks, and the straw underneath them has transformed into an indefinable organic paste. See how well protected our patients are, he points proudly. Surrounded by protective dirt on all sides. Wounded Willie, a patient who's been there for 2 weeks, looks at you both with an expression mixing despair and resignation. His bandages haven't been changed in days and have become a permanent part of his body, glued by a combination of dried blood, pus, and other secretions that science hasn't catalogued yet. What about bandages? You ask innocently. Ah, we never remove bandages, explains Benedict. When they stick to wounds, it's a sign that healing is happening. Removing them would interrupt the natural demonic healing process. Demonic healing. When bandages rot glued to skin, it's advanced medicine. You observe Mrs. Martha, who's had an arm infection for a week. Where the healing ointment should be, there's now a thriving colony of small worms that seem to be reproducing happily. The worms are good, Benedict clarifies when he sees your horrified face. They eat the rotten flesh and leave only the good flesh. It's very modern treatment. Modern. Carnivorous larvae as cutting-edge medical therapy. You're starting to suspect that maybe medieval doctors didn't study at the best schools of the era. What about medical instruments, you ask? remembering yesterday's rusty tools. "Cleaning instruments is for sissies," declares Benedict with conviction. "Dried blood from previous patients adds healing properties to instruments. It's like seasoning on food." Seasoning. Coagulated blood as medical seasoning. You definitely should have chosen to be a turnip farmer. Benedict then shows you the hospital's waste management system. The famous sanitary buckets you already know, plus some piles of used bandages thrown in a corner, decomposing food scraps scattered on the floor, and a ditch dug outside, where they throw various organic materials. What happens when the buckets fill up, you dare to ask? Simple. We empty them in the ditch outside. Very practical. The ditch is exactly 10 feet from the well where they get drinking water. You make a mental note to never, ever drink water at this place. And water for washing hands? Benedict looks at you like you suggested flying to the moon. Wash hands. What for? What for? Why would anyone wash their hands when touching open wounds of different patients? What a revolutionary concept. Dirty hands have more experience, he explains patiently. Each layer of dirt represents a cured patient. It's like war medals. War medals. The crust of dried blood and pus under your nails isn't poor hygiene. It's medical decoration. You observe other nurses working. One is changing a patient's bandages using the same hands he just used to empty a sanitary bucket. Another is preparing food for patients in the same bowl where he keeps leeches. A third is cleaning a wound with a cloth that clearly had other, less noble purposes. "See how everyone works in harmony," comments Benedict proudly. "Maximum efficiency. No time wasted on unnecessary fussiness." Unnecessary fussiness. Like washing hands or using clean instruments. What a waste of time indeed. The climax of the hygiene lesson comes when Benedict shows you the clinical analysis laboratory, a table with urine flasks from various patients, some weeks old, creating an olfactory symphony that would challenge a starving vulture's endurance. "Here we analyze samples for diagnosis," he explains, grabbing a flask with murky liquid of indefinable color. "This urine has been fermenting for 15 days. Perfect for deep humor analysis." He literally smells the flask and makes an analytical grimace. Notes of rot with hints of despair. Definitely excess black bile. Sensory analysis of fermented urine. You're officially witnessing the birth of medieval medical sommellery. What if the urine were fresh, you ask, trying to understand the methodology. Impossible to analyze. Fresh urine hasn't had time to develop its diagnostic properties. It's like wine, needs to age to get good. Urine wine. The comparison is disturbing on several levels. At the end of the day, you observe the result of medieval hygiene philosophy. Patients getting sicker and sicker, infections spreading cheerfully throughout the hospital, and a smell that could be used as chemical warfare. "Productive day," declares Benedict. "Tomorrow we'll learn about hospital nutrition. Prepare your stomach. Prepare your stomach. After 5 days in this place, you suspect your stomach is either prepared for anything or completely destroyed. One of the two. And so, my dear medieval medicine survivor, you discovered that hygiene in the Middle Ages was considered unnecessary luxury, rich people's fussiness, and potentially dangerous to patients' spiritual health. Tomorrow will be another wonderful day in the paradise of pre-scientific medicine. 6th day on the job, and you've officially broken all longevity records in the profession. Today you'll meet the hospital's main star, Dr. Bloodworth, the most respected physician in the region, famous for solving any medical problem with one revolutionary solution: bleeding everyone until they're paler than ghosts. Doctor. Bloodworth arrives in the morning riding a skeletal horse that seems to share the same diet as the hospital patients. He dismounts with pomp and circumstance, adjusting his black cape, which definitely used to be another color in the past, and wielding his medical bag like it's Excalibur. "Master Benedict," he declares dramatically, "I bring with me the most advanced knowledge from the University of Paris Medical School." Paris? Wow. You're impressed until you discover his university operated in a tavern basement, and his diploma was written on a wine-stained napkin. Dr. Bloodworth is a scrawny man with a pointed beard who makes sure to inform everyone that he studied modern scientific medicine. His specialty, bloodletting, for everything. Headache, bloodletting. Stomachache, bloodletting. Broken leg, bloodletting. Dying, even more, bloodletting. Young apprentice, he calls you solemnly. Today, you'll learn the secrets of evidence-based medicine. Evidence! You get excited thinking you'll finally see something scientific in this crazy place. Evidence number 1, he declares pompously, is that all disease is caused by excess bad blood in the body. Therefore, the cure for everything is removing contaminated blood. The logic is irrefutable, simple, direct, and completely wrong. But who cares about details when you have confidence? Dr. Bloodworth opens his bag and reveals his bloodletting instrument collection. Rusty lancets, of course, cracked glass cups, leeches fat as sausages, and a small saw for deep bleedings. You don't even want to know what that means. "First patient," he announces. "Mrs. Betty with back pain." Betty approaches limping and explains she hurt her back carrying wheat sacks. Obviously, right? Clear cause and effect. "Interesting," murmurs Bloodworth, making a face like he's deciphering the universe's mysteries. Back pain clearly indicates excess hot blood accumulated in the lumbar region. He didn't even examine the patient, just looked at her and made his diagnosis. What medical efficiency? "How do you know?" asks Betty innocently. "Simple. People who carry weight have blood heated by effort, and this hot blood accumulates in the back, causing demonic inflammation. Demonic inflammation caused by hot blood. Medieval medicine manages to be creative even in the most bizarre diagnoses. Treatment: 2-gallon bloodletting to cool the humors," prescribes Bloodworth. 2 gallons. Betty barely has 2 gallons of blood in her whole body. But who cares about anatomical details? Bloodworth prepares his lancets with the solemnity of a Catholic priest. "Observe, young apprentice. The art of bloodletting requires mathematical precision." He makes several cuts on Betty's arm while explaining his methodology. Cut number 1 to drain blood from the liver. Cut number 2 to relieve the heart. Cut number 3 to balance the spleen. You watch fascinated as he seems to know exactly which organ is being drained by each random cut on the patient's arm. What advanced anatomical knowledge! Betty gets paler and paler as her blood drips into a wooden basin. "It's working," declares Bloodworth triumphantly. "See how much calmer she is." Of course she's calmer. She's almost fainting from weakness. "When should I stop the bloodletting?" you ask, worried about the grayish color Betty is acquiring. "When she faints," responds Bloodworth cheerfully. Fainting is a sign that all malignant humors have been drained, or a sign she's dying from blood loss, but those are unnecessary technical details. Next patient, Johnny Headache with a headache. "Classic case," exclaims Bloodworth. "Excess hot blood rising to the brain. This time he uses leeches." He places 16 slimy creatures on Johnny's forehead while explaining, Leeches are more precise than lancets. They know exactly how much blood to suck. The leeches stick to poor Johnny's forehead like mini medieval vampires. He looks like he's being tortured by extraterrestrial octopi. How long do they stay? Johnny asks nervously. Until they're satisfied, responds Bloodworth. Wise leeches stop sucking when the patient is cured, or when there's no more blood to suck, but that's unnecessary pessimism. While Johnny sits there looking like a mad science experiment, the day's most dramatic patient arrives. Fever Pete, who's literally burning with fever. "Medical emergency!" declares Bloodworth. "Blood boiling! I need to perform emergency bloodletting." He grabs his small saw, the famous deep bleeding tool, and announces, "I'm going to open the main neck vein for rapid drainage." The neck vein. You watch terrified as he approaches Pete's neck with the saw like he's cutting firewood. "Isn't that dangerous?" you dare to ask. "Of course it's dangerous," he responds cheerfully. "That's why only experienced doctors can do it. It's high-precision surgery." High precision with a rusty saw on someone's neck. What could go wrong? Fortunately, or unfortunately for medieval medicine, Fever Pete faints from terror before the procedure begins. "Perfect!" exclaims Bloodworth. "The body prepared itself for surgery." By now, you understand the pattern. Any patient reaction is interpreted as a positive sign of treatment. During lunch break, Bloodworth teaches you the science behind bloodletting. You see, young apprentice, the human body produces approximately 10 gallons of blood per day. 10 gallons per day. The entire human body has about 5 quarts of blood. But who needs precision when you have confidence? That's why we can remove up to 9 gallons without problems, he continues. We leave just 1 gallon for emergencies. 1 gallon for emergencies. Like blood is car fuel, and you can run on empty. How do we know if we removed too much blood, you ask? Easy. If the patient survives, it was the right amount. If they die, it's because they were already too sick anyway. Medieval medical logic summarized in 2 sentences. If it worked, it was the treatment. If it didn't work, it's the patient's fault. At the end of the day, you take stock. 3 patients bled, 2 fainted, 1 unconscious, and all of them theoretically cured by Dr. Bloodworth's revolutionary scientific method. "Exceptional day," declares the doctor, while cleaning his tools with the same cloth he uses to blow his nose. "Almost 80% cure rate." 80%. He counts as cured the fact that all patients are unconscious and can no longer complain of pain. "Tomorrow we'll learn about anatomy," announces Bloodworth. Prepare to discover the secrets of the human body. Secrets of the human body, according to a guy who thinks the heart is in the stomach and the brain produces bile. This should be educational. And so, my dear survivor of bloodletting medicine, you discovered that medieval medicine had a universal solution for all problems. When in doubt, remove more blood. Didn't work? Remove even more. Still didn't work? It's because you didn't remove enough blood. What a perfect and infallible system. 7th day on the job, and you still have all your organs functioning. This officially puts you in the category of walking medical miracle. Today is the big anatomy lesson day with Dr. Bloodworth, where you'll discover that medieval knowledge about the human body was based on assumptions, fertile imagination, and some dissections of animals completely different from human beings. Dr. Bloodworth arrives super excited, carrying a thick book that looks like it was illustrated by a 5-year-old with coordination problems and questionable artistic tendencies. "Today we'll study the masterpiece of modern anatomy," he announces proudly, "the great atlas of the human body, by Master Clueless da Silva." Master Clueless da Silva. The name itself inspires absolute medical confidence. He opens the book to the first page, and you're faced with a drawing supposedly representing the human body. But it looks more like a stick figure made by someone who never saw a human being in their life. The heart is drawn in the belly, the liver hangs from the neck, and the lungs mysteriously appear in the buttocks region. "Let's start with the circulatory system," declares Bloodworth solemnly. "As everyone knows, the human heart is located in the stomach." In the stomach. Of course! That's why when you eat too much, you feel your heart beating stronger, obviously. The heart, he continues reading from the book, is responsible for heating blood to keep the body warm, exactly like a fireplace heats a house. A fireplace. The heart is a bodily fireplace. The comparison is technically impressive for someone who clearly never opened a human body in his life. "Where does blood come from?" you ask innocently. "Ah, excellent question," he responds enthusiastically. "Blood is produced by the liver from the food we eat. That's why people who eat red meat have red blood, and people who eat vegetables have green blood. Green blood from vegetarians. You've definitely never seen a vegetarian with green blood. But who are you to question advanced medieval science? What about lungs, you insist, trying to understand anatomical logic. Bloodworth consults the book and proclaims, "The lungs are located in the lower part of the body and serve to cool blood when it gets too hot." He points to the drawing where lungs are literally drawn in the gluteal region. "Look here! That's why when we run a lot, we start breathing faster through our buttocks." Breathing through buttocks. Medieval anatomy manages to be creative even in the most basic physiological concepts. But what about the nose? What's it for if we breathe through our buttocks, you ask, genuinely confused. "The nose serves to smell air humors and determine if they're balanced," explains Bloodworth patiently. "If air smells good, you can breathe through your buttocks. If it smells bad, it's because there are demons, so you hold your breath." Integrated olfactory demon detection system. The medieval human body is more sophisticated than we imagined. Bloodworth turns the page and reveals the digestive system. Now, let's study how the body processes food. The drawing shows a digestive system that looks more like a labyrinth designed by a drunk architect. The stomach is connected directly to the brain by a tube. The intestines make several unnecessary decorative loops, and there's a mysterious organ called humor processor that doesn't exist anywhere. "Food enters through the mouth," he explains methodically, "goes down the neck, passes through the heart to be heated, goes to the stomach where it's mixed with bile, rises to the brain where it's thought about, returns to the liver where it becomes blood, and finally is distributed through the body via the toes." Through the toes. Medieval blood circulation works like a bizarre hydraulic system operated by feet. "What about the brain?" you dare to ask. "Ah, the brain," he gets excited. "Fascinating organ. It serves to cool blood when it rises too hot from the heart region. Brain as body cooling system. No thoughts, memories, or consciousness. Just a biological air conditioner. That's why smart people have cool heads," he continues, "and stupid people have hot heads. Pure science. Pure science based on completely random observations and non-existent correlations." Bloodworth then decides to do a practical demonstration using Johnny Headache as an anatomical model. "Let's locate the main organs," he announces, poking various parts of poor Johnny's body. He presses the belly. Here we have the heart. Pokes the back. Cooling lungs. Taps the forehead. Brain refrigeration system. And finally, squeezes the feet. Blood distribution pumps. Johnny Headache looks at you both with an expression mixing terror and absolute confusion. You don't blame him. What about women, you ask? Is their anatomy different? Completely different, responds Bloodworth, consulting another page. Women have an additional organ called hysteria processor, located somewhere between the stomach and ideas. Hysteria processor, a specific organ to explain why women sometimes disagree with men. How convenient. This organ, he continues, is directly connected to the moon. That's why women go crazy when the moon is full. Lunar connection via hysteria organ. Medieval anatomy is more elaborate than science fiction. The lesson continues with explanations about the nervous system. Nerves are small tubes that transport liquid humors through the body. When someone gets nervous, it's because the tubes are clogged. Nerves is body plumbing, and you thought it was bioelectricity. How do we unclog nerves, you ask, fearing the answer. Bloodletting, obviously, responds Bloodworth. Bloodletting cleans all internal tubes. Of course, the universal medieval solution, when in doubt, remove more blood. Medieval anatomy also includes exclusive organs that apparently only existed in the Middle Ages. The sin detector, located in the left elbow, the good intentions processor, behind the right ear, and the mysterious luck organ, which changes location depending on moon phases. Where's the soul located, you ask out of curiosity? The soul is spread throughout the body, explains Bloodworth, but the highest concentration is in the left pinky toe. In the pinky toe? That's why when you stub your toe on furniture, the pain is so intense, you're hurting your own soul. At the end of the lesson, you make a mental summary of medieval anatomy. Heart in stomach, lungs in buttocks, brain as air conditioner, liver producing colored blood, nerves as plumbing, and soul concentrated in the pinky toe. Now you know everything about the human body, declares Bloodworth proudly. Tomorrow, we'll learn about night shifts. Night shift at the medieval hospital. You suspect it'll be an experience that tests not only your questionable medical knowledge, but also your courage facing superstitions, imaginary ghosts, and patients making weird noises in the darkness. And so, my dear student of fantastical anatomy, you discovered that medieval medicine worked with a completely invented body map, where organs were in random places and had functions that defy any biological logic known to humanity. Tomorrow will be another day in medieval medical paradise. 8th day on the job, and you've officially become a living legend of medieval nursing. Today comes the moment all rookie nurses dread, the night shift. Get ready to discover that working in a medieval hospital at night is like taking a guided tour through hell with tasting stops. At 7 p.m., when the sun cowardly bids farewell to the horizon, clearly doesn't want to witness what's about to happen, you take your post as official night nurse. Master Benedict hands you a half-melted candle and a pitying smile. Good luck, he says, running away like the hospital's on fire. Remember, if you hear weird noises, it's just the wind. If you see shadows, it's just your imagination. And if something attacks you, well, it was nice knowing you. What comforting words. Nothing like starting a night shift with predictions of violent death. The hospital at night is completely different from the daytime hospital. It's worse. Much worse. The darkness seems to intensify all the horrible smells, transforming the environment into a traumatic sensory experience. Your candle is practically useless against the thick darkness that seems to have its own consistency. Patients also get different at night. During the day, they just moan in pain, but at night, they make sounds that are definitely not human. Mrs. Betty, the lady with digestive problems, makes noises like a dragon with indigestion. Wounded Willie emits mysterious whistles that may or may not be normal breathing. And Crooked Leg Pete, who lost his leg in Dr. Bloodworth's brilliant surgery, talks to himself in languages you suspect don't exist. Psst, you whisper to Pete. Who are you talking to? My leg, he responds naturally. It said it misses the rest of my body and wants to come back. The amputated leg wants to return. Of course. Why not? Nothing makes sense in this place anyway. At 10 p.m., you hear the first inexplicable noise. Footsteps upstairs. The problem is, the hospital only has one floor. You look at the ceiling and see small pieces of straw falling, as if someone were walking up there. Just rats, you try to convince yourself, until you realize these rats are wearing boots. Midnight arrives with a symphony of horrors. Howling winds, though there's no wind, chains swinging, though there are no chains, and the unmistakable sound of someone dragging something heavy across the floor. You follow the sound and discover Mrs. Martha, the patient with back pain, literally dragging her own bed across the room. Mrs. Martha, what are you doing? Running away from the ghosts who want to steal my humors, she responds, like it's the most obvious thing in the world. Bodily humor-stealing ghosts. Medieval medical mythology is incredibly specific in its paranoia. 1 a.m. brings the first real nighttime emergency. One-eyed Joe, victim of Dr. Bloodworth's precise surgery, wakes up screaming that he can see too much with the eye he no longer has. I'm seeing through my phantom eye, he yells, and I don't like what I'm seeing. Phantom eye with supernatural vision. You start wondering if medieval surgeries create more problems than they solve. What are you seeing, you ask, half not wanting to know the answer. Demons dancing in the kitchen, and they're making soup with ingredients that are definitely not vegetables. You decide not to investigate the kitchen. Some truths are too heavy to be discovered during a night shift. 2 a.m. is officially werewolf hour according to local tradition. Apparently, anyone with high fever during a full moon automatically transforms into a werewolf. Tonight you have 3 candidates. Fever Frank, who's had fever for a week, Mary Payne, who developed fever yesterday, and curiously, yourself, who's starting to feel symptoms of something indefinable. How do we identify werewolves? You ask the only awake patient. Visions Tony. Easy. Werewolves have hair on their palms, howl during sleep, and develop inexplicable hunger for raw meat. You look at your own hands. Definitely hairy, but they always were. And you really want to eat something, but that might just be normal hunger after 8 days of questionable hospital food. 3 a.m. is when things get really interesting. Mrs. Martha, the patient with skin rashes, gets up from bed and starts doing a ritual dance around the sanitary buckets, singing in broken Latin. Exorcismus Demonicus Sanitarius, she sings dramatically, spinning like an uncontrolled top. Mrs. Martha, do you know Latin? No, she responds without stopping her dance. But the demons in my skin are teaching me. Educational demons. At least someone's learning something in this hospital. 4 a.m. brings the most unexpected visit of the night. A group of 3 hooded men enter the hospital carrying an unconscious person on an improvised stretcher. Emergency, they announce. Vampire bite. Vampire bite. Finally, an emergency that doesn't involve bloodletting as primary treatment. You examine the patient, who's clearly just drunk, and discover 2 small punctures on his neck that were definitely made by a pointed tool, not supernatural fangs. How do you know it was a vampire? You ask the hooded men. Because we found him near the cemetery with these marks on his neck. And everyone knows vampires live in cemeteries. The logic is irrefutable. Person found near cemetery with wounds. Sakatbintwarns, obviously vampire victim. Why didn't you think of that? What's the treatment for vampire bite, you ask, genuinely curious about supernatural medical protocols. Garlic on the neck, wooden cross on the chest, and holy water on the feet. They respond in unison, like they'd memorized a manual. You apply the treatment because arguing with 3 religious fanatics at 4 a.m. doesn't seem like a good strategy, and the patient miraculously recovers as soon as his hangover passes. 5 a.m. is digestion demons hour. All patients with stomach problems start making internal noises that echo through the hospital like an orchestra of out-of-tune wind instruments. The sound is so loud, you're sure it's waking the dead in the neighboring cemetery. 6 a.m. finally brings the first sign you might survive the shift. The first daylight starting to enter through the cracked window. Patients gradually stop making supernatural noises and return to their normal state of regular moans and complaints. 7 a.m. Master Benedict returns, fresh as a daisy, to take the day shift. He finds you leaning against the wall, holding a melted candle, and staring into space with the expression of someone who's seen too much. "How was the night?" he asks cheerfully. "I survived," you respond with the hoarse voice of someone who spent 8 hours whispering prayers and curses in equal measure. "Great! Tomorrow you're doing night shift again." Again, because apparently surviving a medieval night shift automatically qualifies you to repeat the traumatic experience. And so, my dear survivor of the darkness shift, you discovered that working in a medieval hospital at night is like participating in a horror festival where all the actors take their roles very seriously, and you're simultaneously a nurse, exorcist, vampire hunter, and werewolf specialist. What a versatile profession! 9th day on the job, and you've officially become the most experienced medieval nurse in recent history, which isn't hard considering all your predecessors died. Today is Emergency Day, where you'll discover that medieval accidents make modern accidents look like scratches from a pampered kitten. The morning starts peacefully until at 8 o'clock you hear a deafening noise outside. Galloping horses, men screaming, and the unmistakable sound of metal clashing against metal. Must be excited merchants doing business, you think innocently. Until the hospital door bursts open violently and 15 bloodied warriors enter like it's a Black Friday sale at a hardware store. "Emergency!" roars the first warrior, a bearded giant with an arrow stuck in his shoulder like a human shish kebab. "We just came out of an epic battle against our neighbors over an argument about who has the best chickens. A war over chickens. Medieval diplomacy is truly sophisticated." Master Benedict comes running, rubbing his hands excitedly like he just won the lottery. "How wonderful! Patients in bulk. Today, we're gonna make money." He quickly assesses the wounds and declares, "We have here a classic case of excess iron in the body. Treatment: remove all iron and perform bloodletting to balance war humors. Remove the iron." He wants to remove the arrows and swords stuck in the warriors like they're rose thorns. The first patient is Godfrey the Bloodthirsty, who has a small sword pierced through his right arm. "Doc, this hurts like hell," he complains. "Of course it hurts," responds Benedict. "Cold iron unbalances the hot humors of warrior blood. Let's heat the sword before removing it." Heat the sword in fire, while it's still stuck in the guy's arm. Benedict literally lights a bonfire in the middle of the hospital, because fire safety is an unnecessary modern concept, and starts heating the tip of the sword sticking out of Godfrey's arm. "This is gonna hurt a tiny bit," he warns cheerfully. A tiny bit is the biggest lie in medieval medical history. Godfrey screams so loud, you're sure he woke the dead in the neighboring cemetery, some dead from other cemeteries, and probably disturbed St. Peter's sleep in heaven. Next patient, Bartholomew the battle-scarred, who achieved the feat of taking a spear thrust that went in one side of his body and came out the other, turning him into a human version of shish kebab on a stick. "Interesting," murmurs Benedict, observing the spear completely piercing the warrior. "Bilateral perforation with blunt object. Very rare." "It hurts a lot, Doc," moans Bartholomew. "Obviously. You have excess cold wind passing through the hole. We'll seal the openings with beeswax." Beeswax. Like Bartholomew is a leaky canoe. Benedict literally takes melted wax and tries to plug the holes while the spear is still pierced through the poor guy's body. The result is Bartholomew looking like a giant human candle with spear decoration. The third warrior, Alaric the Fearsome, has the most creative problem. He managed to get his head stuck in a helmet that wasn't his size, and now his head is trapped like a cork in a bottle. How did this happen, you ask, genuinely impressed by the accident's creativity? "I bet my brother that my head would fit in his helmet," explains Alaric with his voice muffled by metal. "I won the bet, but now I can't get it off." "Simple problem," declares Benedict. "We'll grease his head with pig fat and pull hard." He literally pours a bowl of rancid fat inside the helmet, turning Alaric into a medieval version of an oil lamp with a human head inside. Meanwhile, domestic emergencies arrive. First, Mrs. Bertha, who achieved the feat of getting her hand stuck to a pot of crystallized honey. "I was making sweets to sell at the fair when my hand got stuck," she explains, waving the pot stuck to her hand like a weird medieval hammer. "Crystallization of sugary humors," diagnoses Benedict. "We'll dissolve it with fermented urine." He grabs one of the urine flasks that have been aging for weeks in the laboratory and pours it over Bertha's hand. The resulting smell would make a professional handyman faint with envy. Next domestic emergency. Clumsy Joe, who managed to get his finger stuck in an empty wine bottle and now has his swollen finger trapped like a human cork. "I was trying to get the last drops of wine when my finger got stuck," he explains, shaking the bottle hanging from his finger. "Digital alcoholic inflammation," declares Benedict solemnly. "The alcohol expanded the finger's humors. Treatment: more alcohol to balance it out." The logic is irrefutable. Finger stuck because of alcohol. Solution is more alcohol. Why didn't anyone think of this before? The afternoon's most dramatic emergency is Bad Luck Bob, who managed to fall in a well, hit his head on a stone, tear his clothes on a thorn, and on top of that was attacked by an angry goose on the way to the hospital. He arrives dripping dirty water, with his head bleeding, clothes in tatters, and goose bite marks all over his body. "What happened first?" asks Benedict, fascinated by the collection of accidents in one person. "I fell in the well because I was running from the goose, hit my head trying to get out of the well, tore my clothes in the rush, and the goose followed me here because I think it enjoyed attacking me," explains Bob. "Goose curse," diagnoses Benedict dramatically. "Very rare. Happens when someone offends an ancestral goose." Goose curse. Medieval medicine has supernatural explanations even for attacks by irritated domestic birds. "How do I break the curse?" asks Bob, genuinely worried. "Simple. You need to apologize to all geese within 5 miles, make a corn offering at the nearest lake, and sleep 3 nights with goose feathers under your pillow." Medieval behavioral therapy involving geese. Psychology of the era was quite specific. At the end of the day, you take stock of emergencies. 5 warriors with war wounds, 2 still with metal stuck in their bodies, 3 victims of bizarre domestic accidents, and 1 man cursed by a vengeful goose. Survival rate predicted by Benedict, almost 30%. One of our best days. 30%. The other 70% will die from infection, blood loss, poisoning from treatments, or in extreme cases, be attacked again by the same geese that cursed them. Tomorrow, announces Benedict cheerfully, while cleaning tools in the same bucket where he washes feet. We'll learn about epidemics. The plague arrived in the neighboring town. The plague. The disease that killed half of medieval Europe. And you're going to treat it with bloodletting, random herbs, and probably some therapy involving cursed domestic animals. And so, my dear medieval emergency specialist, you discovered that accidents in the Middle Ages were creative, violent, and frequently involved animals with behavioral problems. Treatment, as always, was based on bizarre assumptions, regional superstitions, and unshakable confidence that any problem can be solved with sufficient quantities of disgusting substances applied to the wrong place. What an efficient medical system! 10th day on the job, and you've officially broken all survival records in the world's most dangerous medieval profession. Today came the news everyone dreaded. The bubonic plague arrived in the neighboring town and is heading this way. Get ready to discover that medieval safety protocols for dealing with epidemics make current methods look like advanced science fiction. The morning starts with Master Benedict arriving in total panic, carrying an official scroll that looks like it was written with blood, and probably was. "Maximum alert!" he shouts dramatically, like he's announcing the end of the world. The Black Death arrived in Hope Village and is coming our way. Hope Village. What an ironic name for the first place to be devastated by history's deadliest plague. But don't worry, continues Benedict, with the forced optimism of someone who knows everyone's gonna die. We have the most advanced medieval safety protocols to handle this situation. Medieval safety protocols. You get excited thinking you'll finally see something that makes medical sense. How naive you still are. Benedict unfolds an official manual called Complete Guide to Surviving the Plague Without Dying. Much. Written by the renowned Dr. Paranoid of Diseases. The first page has an illustration of people wearing masks that look more like giant toucan beaks. First protocol, he declares solemnly. Personal protective equipment. He hands you an advanced medical mask, a piece of leather with 2 eye holes and a long nose stuffed with aromatic herbs, dried rose petals, and the special ingredient, purified horse manure. The elongated nose keeps the plague away from your face, explains Benedict proudly. And the horse manure absorbs malignant vapors from the disease. Malignant vapors absorbed by horse poop. Medieval science is truly revolutionary in its creativity. You put on the mask and immediately understand why plague doctors had such low life expectancy. It wasn't the disease killing them, it was suffocation caused by their own masks. Second protocol, patient isolation, announces Benedict, pointing to a special area he improvised, a corner of the hospital separated by a curtain made of sewn potato sacks. This physical barrier prevents plague demons from crossing to the rest of the hospital, he explains with the conviction of someone who just invented history's greatest medical innovation. A potato sack curtain as an anti-demon barrier? Why don't modern hospitals use this advanced technology? The third protocol is environmental disinfection. Benedict grabs a bowl with a mixture that smells like a skunk fought a rotten fish inside a clogged toilet. Special disinfectant potion, he announces proudly. Sour vinegar, pig urine, holy water left over from last Mass, and concentrated garlic essence. He starts spraying this disinfection around the hospital using an improvised sprayer, a pig bladder with little holes. The resulting smell would make a vulture go vegetarian. "Now we're completely protected," declares Benedict. No plague demon can survive this smell. Neither demons, nor humans, nor probably any life form known to science. At 10 a.m. arrived the first refugees from Hope Village. 5 families in deplorable condition, clearly fleeing the plague that devastated their town. The problem is, they probably brought the plague with them. "Perfect," exclaims Benedict. "Test patients for our protocols. Test patients, like they're medieval lab rats." The first refugee is Johnny from Lost Village, a man who clearly has all plague symptoms: high fever, swollen buboes, dark skin spots, and that characteristic pallor of someone dancing with death. "Classic case of bubonic demonic invasion," diagnoses Benedict through his long nose mask. Immediate treatment, triple bloodletting to drain the demons. Triple bloodletting, because removing blood from someone already dying of plague is obviously the logical solution. "But doctor," you dare to question, "he's already very weak." "Exactly," responds Benedict. "Weakness is a sign the demons are winning. We need to drain them before they take complete control." The logic is irrefutable. The weaker the patient, the more aggressive the treatment should be. Why didn't anyone think of this before? Benedict prepares his bloodletting instruments with pomp and circumstance, like he's performing a religious ceremony. The leeches for this special procedure are anti-plague leeches, which are exactly like normal leeches but cost twice the price. These leeches were specifically trained to suck plague demons, he explains, while placing a dozen of the creatures on poor Johnny. They know the difference between normal blood and demonic blood. Leeches with specialized training in demonology. Medieval veterinary medicine was surprisingly advanced. The next patient is Mrs. Mary of the Spots, who developed characteristic black plague marks all over her body. "Demonic decorations," diagnoses Benedict. The demons are marking territory. The treatment? Scraping the spots with a dull knife and covering the area with a paste made of burned wood ashes, coarse salt, and more horse manure, which apparently is the universal ingredient of medieval medicine. "The ashes confuse the demons," explains Benedict, while literally scraping the poor woman's skin. They think she's already been cremated and will look for another host. Demonic psychological therapy through skin scraping. Medieval psychiatry was more creative than we imagined. The most dramatic protocol is reserved for little Timmy of the Fevers, a child with extremely high fever who constantly delires. "Infantile demonic possession," declares Benedict. "Pediatric cases require medical exorcism." Medical exorcism. A revolutionary combination of medicine and religion. Benedict prepares a healing ritual involving burning mystical herbs, which are clearly dried weeds from the backyard, reciting prayers in broken Latin, which he's obviously making up on the spot, and sprinkling holy water on the patient, which is the same dirty water they use for everything. "Exorcizamus te, demonis pestilentius," he declaims dramatically, waving his hands over Timmy like a medieval magician. "Regressus ad infernos et liavus alonius nostrus patientius." Latin made up on the spot, because obviously demons don't notice when someone's improvising prayers. In mid-afternoon comes the most terrifying news. A merchant reports that half of Hope Village died in 3 days, and the plague is spreading faster than gossip in a small town. "Excellent!" exclaims Benedict with disturbing enthusiasm. "This means our methods are even more necessary. Let's prepare the maximum emergency protocol." Maximum emergency protocol. which consists of burning more horse manure to purify the air, increasing bloodletting dosage to accelerate demonic drainage, and praying louder to confuse evil spirits. What if this doesn't work, you ask, genuinely worried about the escalating situation? Then we prepare the final protocol, responds Benedict mysteriously. Strategic retreat to the mountains. Strategic retreat. The most honest medical protocol in medieval medicine. When everything fails, run for the hills. At the end of the day, you take stock of the situation. 5 plague refugees treated with methods that will probably accelerate their deaths. A hospital disinfected with a mixture that violates several laws of chemistry, and safety protocols that would make a virus laugh in despair. Survival rate predicted by Benedict. With our advanced methods, we estimate an impressive 15%. 15%. The other 85% will die from plague, treatment, disinfection, or suffocation caused by protective masks. Tomorrow, announces Benedict while organizing his medical torture instruments, if we're still alive, we'll learn about medieval childbirth. If we're still alive, the first honest prediction he's made in 10 days. And so, my dear medieval safety protocol specialist, you discovered that facing an epidemic in the Middle Ages was like fighting a dragon with a wooden spoon. Technically possible, but statistically suicidal. Tomorrow will be another day in medieval medical paradise. If the pestilent apocalypse allows it. 11th day on the job, and you're still breathing. This officially qualifies you as the luckiest medieval nurse in history, or the most stubborn, depending on your perspective. Today, you'll learn about medieval obstetrics, where bringing a life into the world was literally a bet between life and death, and the house always won. The morning starts with desperate screams from outside. "Midwife! I need a midwife!" A woman in labor arrived at the hospital, and you quickly discover that medieval midwife is basically a euphemism for person who hopes everything works out while shamelessly improvising. Master Benedict appears carrying his professional obstetric kit, a wooden box containing ropes to tie up the mother, a hammer, unknown and terrifying function, dull knives to cut the umbilical cord or anything getting in the way, and the premium item, a good luck charm made from wild boar tooth. "Here comes our specialty," he announces proudly. "Births are our area of greatest success." "What's the survival rate?" you ask innocently. "An impressive 20%, responds Benedict. "For both mothers and babies." 20%. 80% chance of death for everyone involved. What encouraging statistics. The patient is Mrs. Hope, who's probably going to need a lot more than that. A sturdy peasant woman having her 8th child. At least she has experience, you think, until you discover that, of her 7 previous children, only 2 survived medieval childbirth. "Experience is fundamental," declares Benedict. "Experienced women know how to collaborate with our scientific methods." Scientific methods. You're curious to see this medieval obstetric science. Benedict consults his manual, Great Guide to Successful Births, or How Not to Kill Everyone in the Process, written by the renowned Dr. Clueless of the Bellies. The first page has an anatomical drawing showing the baby coming out of the mother's stomach, because apparently nobody knew exactly where babies came from. "First step," he announces solemnly, "birth environment preparation." The preparation consists of spreading fresh straw on the floor, which is the same old straw, just beaten to disguise it, lighting aromatic candles, pieces of melted animal fat with questionable herbs, and positioning the medieval birth chair, a diabolical invention that looks more like a torture instrument with a little cushion. This chair was specifically designed to facilitate births, explains Benedict proudly, pointing to an object that was definitely adapted from a broken barber's chair. The hole in the seat allows the baby to fall directly into a basin. Allows the baby to fall. Like birth is a medieval extreme sport. What if the baby doesn't fall by itself, you ask, fearing the answer? Then we use stimulation methods, responds Benedict excitedly, grabbing a rope. We tie up the mother and swing the chair until the baby decides to come out. Human centrifuge method. Medieval obstetrics was truly innovative in its brutality. Mrs. Hope is positioned in the medieval chair of death, while Benedict prepares his auxiliary tools, which include rancid olive oil to lubricate the process, strong vinegar to accelerate contractions, and a mysterious mixture called baby expulsion potion, which smells like it could expel anything within a 3-mile radius. "Drink this," he orders, offering the potion to Hope. "It'll make the baby want to come out faster." She takes a sip and immediately gets a look, suggesting the baby isn't the only thing that wants to exit her body quickly. "Now let's speed up the process," declares Benedict, grabbing a small drum. Rhythmic music stimulates contractions. He starts beating the drum like he's summoning ancestral spirits, while singing a melody that sounds more like an incantation to invoke birth demons. "Come out, baby. Come out, baby. Don't delay anymore." Medieval obstetric musical therapy. Why don't music conservatories teach this specialty? 2 hours later, when it's clear the baby isn't cooperating with the drumbeat, Benedict decides to move to more advanced methods. "We'll use the inversion technique," he announces dramatically. "Inversion?" you ask, already knowing you'll regret it. "Simple. We turn the mother upside down so the baby slides down by gravity." He literally ties Hope by her feet and hangs her from a ceiling beam like she's a ham being cured. The poor woman hangs upside down while Benedict gently rocks her to stimulate internal baby movement. "This can't be right," you protest. "Of course it is," Benedict retorts. "It's basic science. Liquids always flow down, so babies do too." Medieval physics logic applied to obstetrics. Isaac Newton must be rolling in the grave that hasn't been dug yet. After another hour of hope swinging like a human pendulum, Benedict decides to try the spiritual approach. "Clearly, we have a case of stubborn baby," he diagnoses. "Let's do preventive pediatric exorcism." Exorcism on babies who haven't even been born yet. Medieval prenatal medicine was truly comprehensive. Benedict starts reciting made-up prayers while sprinkling holy water on Hope's belly, who's still upside down. Exitus bibius, stopius stubborninus, nasius rapideus, obstetric macaronic Latin. Because obviously, unborn babies understand commands in languages that don't even exist. Finally, after 6 hours of medical torture disguised as birth, assistance. Nature decides to take control and the baby is born, despite all the medieval methods, not because of them. "Success!" shouts Benedict triumphantly, like he personally created life. "Our scientific methods worked perfectly." The baby is purple, the mother is exhausted and traumatized, and you're wondering how the human species managed to survive medieval medicine. "What now?" you ask, observing the newborn who looks more like a giant grape. "Now comes the most important part," declares Benedict, "determining if the baby is blessed or cursed." He picks up the baby and examines it with the seriousness of a medieval quality inspector. "Let's see. Loud crying indicates strong lungs. Purplish color means royal blood. And look, born with clenched fists. Is that good or bad?" Clenched fists mean he was born ready to fight demons, explains Benedict cheerfully. He's a natural warrior. Medieval newborn behavioral analysis, because obviously babies are born with predefined careers. Medieval postpartum is even more creative. Benedict prescribes Hope a diet of restorative foods. Broth from old bones, sour wine with mysterious herbs, and porridge made with cereals that have definitely seen better days. And to strengthen breast milk, he adds, she should eat raw goat liver every morning. Raw goat liver. Medieval postpartum nutrition would give modern nutritionists nightmares. At the end of the day, miraculously, both mother and baby survived the medieval assisted birth. Not due to medical competence, but pure biological stubbornness and absurd luck. Another success for our hospital, declares Benedict proudly. 100% survival rate today. 100%. He conveniently ignores the 15 other births he assisted where neither mother nor baby survived. But who cares about statistics when you have one success case? Tomorrow, announces Benedict, while cleaning his obstetric tools in the same bucket where he washes feet, we'll learn about medieval psychiatric medicine. Medieval psychiatric medicine. You suspect you'll discover methods of treating madness that will make physical tea. Treatments seem like relaxation spas. And so, my dear medieval obstetric specialist, you discovered that bringing life into the world in the Middle Ages was like playing Russian roulette with nature, where doctors did their best to disrupt the natural process while pretending to help. At least someone survived to tell the story. 12th day on the job and you still maintain your mental sanity. Relatively. That's impressive, considering today you'll learn about medieval psychiatry, where treating mental illness was basically a combination of Catholic exorcism and medieval WWE. Get ready to discover that curing madness methods made physical treatments look like spa sessions. The morning starts with an unusual situation. 3 burly men arrive at the hospital, dragging a tied-up woman like she's a very reluctant Christmas present. "We brought our sister Mary of the Voices," announces the biggest one. "She's possessed by demons that make her talk to herself." Mary of the Voices looks at everyone with an expression mixing indignation and exhaustion. Clearly, an intelligent woman who had the misfortune of being born in an era where having your own opinions was considered a symptom of demonic possession. Classic case of aggravated female hysteria, diagnoses Master Benedict without even examining the patient. Probably caused by excess independent thinking. Excess independent thinking. Medieval medicine had a cure even for female intelligence. Benedict consults his psychiatric manual, Great Compendium of Madness and How to Expel It from the Body, written by the renowned Dr. Exorcist of Mental Demons. The first page shows a drawing of an open head with little devils dancing where the brain should be. "First evaluation," he declares solemnly. "Basic demonic possession test." He approaches Mary and begins a series of scientific tests that look more like an Inquisition interrogation. "Do you have your own thoughts about religion?" "Yes, I think that," Mary starts to answer. "Positive for demons," Benedict interrupts dramatically. "Women shouldn't have theological opinions." Second test. "Do you question the decisions of the men in your family?" "Well, sometimes they make stupid choices." "Double possession," he screams. "The demons of rebellion have manifested." Final test. "Do you know how to read?" "Of course I can read." "Triple demonic possession," Benedict declares in total panic. Literate women are the biggest sign of satanic interference. Female literacy as supernatural evidence. Medieval education really had its priorities straight. "What's the treatment?" asks one of the brothers, clearly worried about the scientific diagnosis. Purifying chain therapy, announces Benedict proudly, like he just invented modern psychology. He disappears into the back of the hospital and returns carrying rusty chains that definitely had a previous life restraining large animals. These special chains were blessed by 7 different priests, he explains. They prevent demons from moving inside the body. Anti-demon chains. Medieval religious metallurgy was surprisingly specialized. Mary is chained to the wall like a medieval criminal, while Benedict prepares the next phase of treatment. Now we'll do spiritual fasting therapy. Spiritual fasting? Simple. We don't give her food until the demons get hungry and leave to find another host. The logic is brilliant. Demons apparently have nutritional needs and can be expelled through hunger. Why? Didn't anyone think of this before? What if she faints from hunger? You ask, genuinely worried. Even better, responds Benedict. When she faints, it's a sign the demons left, and she's cured. Or a sign she's dying of malnutrition. But those are unnecessary technical details. Next psychiatric patient, Johnny Fixation, a man who developed a mania for counting stones. He spends all day counting stones on the floor, walls, anywhere. Demonic obsession with numbers, diagnoses Benedict. Mathematics demons possessed his mind. Mathematics demons. Apparently, even academic disciplines had their own supernatural entities. The treatment for Johnny is mental confusion therapy. Benedict literally bangs pots near his ear while shouting random numbers to confuse the mathematical demons. 17, 43, 89, he yells while making deafening noise. Now the demons can't count anymore. Psychiatric treatment through directed noise pollution. Medieval occupational therapy was quite creative. The most dramatic case arrives at lunchtime. Tony of the Melancholies, a man suffering deep sadness since losing his entire family in the last plague epidemic. Demonic depression, diagnoses Benedict without hesitation. Sadness demons have installed themselves permanently. You observe Tony and realize he's clearly suffering from normal, natural grief. But in medieval medicine, normal human emotions are always signs of supernatural interference. What's the treatment for sadness, you ask, hoping for something minimally compassionate? Therapeutic flagellation, responds Benedict excitedly, grabbing a small whip. Physical pain expels spiritual pain. He literally starts whipping Tony while screaming, "Get out, demons of melancholy! This body is no place for you!" Tony obviously gets even sadder being beaten, but Benedict interprets this as progress. Look, he's crying more. That means demons are being expelled through tears. Medieval shock therapy. Treating depression with more trauma. What psychiatric innovation? The most bizarre treatment is reserved for multiple personality Pete, a man who simply has variable temperament, sometimes happy, sometimes serious, like any normal person. Multiple possession, declares Benedict in panic. He has at least 3 different demons taking turns in control. The treatment? Rotating exorcism. Benedict prays to expel each demon individually, making Pete spin in a chair to confuse the evil spirits. In the name of St. Peter, I expel the demon of joy, he declaims, while spinning Pete to the right. In the name of St. Paul, I expel the demon of seriousness, spins to the left. In the name of St. John, I expel the demon of confusion, spins faster. In the end, Pete is so dizzy he can't even stand. But Benedict considers this a total victory. Look, the demons got so confused they abandoned the host. The afternoon brings the most challenging patient. Mrs. Weatherwise Wanda, an elderly lady who developed the habit of predicting rain by observing clouds. Witchcraft disguised as wisdom, diagnoses Benedict. She's using demonic powers to divine the future. Predicting rain by observing clouds, sparn witchcraft. Medieval meteorology was truly an occult science. The treatment is the most dramatic. Complete purification ritual. Benedict prepares a bonfire in the middle of the hospital, because fire safety hasn't been invented yet, and announces he'll burn the demons without burning the person. He makes Wanda stand near the fire while throwing herbs that produce toxic smoke. Purifying heat will expel all evil spirits. The poor lady coughs and tears up from the smoke, but Benedict interprets this as demons being expelled through respiratory pathways. At the end of the day, you observe the result of medieval psychiatric therapy. Mary still chained and fainting from hunger, Johnny deaf from pot noise, Tony traumatized by therapeutic beating, Pete too dizzy to walk, and Wanda intoxicated by smoke. Very productive day, declares Benedict. Psychiatric cure rate of almost 50%. 50%. He counts as cure the fact that half the patients are too unconscious to manifest symptoms. Tomorrow, he announces, while organizing his psychological torture tools, we'll learn about the most challenging day in medieval medicine. The most challenging day. After 12 days in this medical hell, you can't imagine what could be worse than everything you've already seen. And so, my dear medieval psychiatry specialist, you discovered that treating mental illness in the Middle Ages was basically torturing normal people until they became really crazy, then declaring victory when they stopped complaining. What an impressive psychological breakthrough! 13th day on the job, and you've officially become a statistical anomaly in medieval medicine. Today is the day that will test all limits of your physical, mental, and spiritual resistance. Get ready for the most chaotic day of your nursing career, where you'll discover it's totally possible to die from overwork, especially when that work involves torturing people disguised as medicine. The day starts at 5 a.m., 2 hours earlier than normal, with Master Benedict shaking you violently. Wake up. Today is Medical Apocalypse Day. Medical Apocalypse. What a comforting term to start the day. What happened? You ask, still trying to understand why you're being woken when it's still dark. 3 simultaneous emergencies, he screams in total panic. Wounded arrived from an epic battle. A chicken curse epidemic hit the neighboring village, and the local lord's wife is having a complicated birth. 3 emergencies at once, like one wasn't enough to kill you with incompetence. How many patients, you ask, fearing the answer. Approximately 45, responds Benedict cheerfully. The biggest medical challenge of our career. 45 patients for 2 people to treat with methods that kill more than cure. How wonderful. The first wave arrives at 6 a.m. 15 warriors wounded in a battle, apparently fought with farm tools. There are people with sickles stuck in anatomically impossible places, axes glued to various limbs, and one guy who managed to impale himself on a plow grate. Priorities, shouts Benedict. First, we remove all iron from bodies. Then we do mass bloodletting to balance war humors. Mass bloodletting. Like a death assembly line is the solution for mass injuries. You spend the entire morning running between bloodied warriors, trying to remove farm tools from human bodies, while Benedict shouts contradictory instructions. Remove the sickle from his arm. No, wait. Heat the sickle first. Too hot. Now it's too cold. Where's my saw? At 9 a.m. arrived the chicken epidemic patients. 20 peasants who developed a skin rash after being attacked by a flock of angry chickens who were probably just defending their coop. Collective avian curse, diagnoses Benedict. We need mass exorcism. Mass exorcism. Like it's a demon clearance sale at the medieval market. You find yourself preparing 20 treatments simultaneously. Dubious herb mixtures, ointments that smell worse than the symptoms, and potions that definitely violate several laws of chemistry. All this while 15 warriors moan in the background, waiting for medieval surgery. Noon brings the third emergency. Lady Brunhilde, wife of the local lord, in labor for 18 hours. She arrives in a golden carriage, surrounded by guards who clearly would rather be anywhere else. "Midwife! Midwife!" shouts the lord. "Save my wife, or you'll meet the dungeon." Prison threat for medical incompetence. Like you have control over the results of your bizarre methods. "No problem," declares Benedict with suicidal confidence. "Noble births are our specialty." Specialty? The guy with a 20% success rate considers himself a specialist. Now you have to divide attention between 15 warriors being surgeried, 20 peasants being exorcised, and a noble in labor being assisted, all simultaneously. With medieval methods, that don't work. The afternoon becomes complete hell when 10 more random emergencies arrive. Bizarre domestic accidents, mysterious injuries, and 3 cases of demonic possession, which are clearly just people stressed with medieval life. You're literally running from patient to patient like a medieval chaos waiter. "I need leeches on warrior number 7. Where's the anti-demon ointment for the spotted peasant?" The noble is screaming louder. Is that good or bad? Why is there a horse inside the hospital? Who released the exorcised chickens? Yes, the chickens that supposedly caused the epidemic were brought to the hospital to confront the demons they carried. And now they're running loose, pecking wounded patients. At 4 p.m., you're functioning purely on survival instinct. Your medical methods boil down to applying any ointment to any wound, throwing holy water at anyone screaming, and hoping nobody dies in front of you. Chaos reaches its peak when Lady Brunhilde finally enters the final stage of labor, exactly when one of the surgeried warriors wakes up and starts a fight with another warrior who apparently fought on the enemy side in battle. Now you have a noble giving birth, 2 warriors fighting with surgical instruments stuck in their bodies, 20 peasants delirious from exorcism, 10 random emergencies, and chickens attacking everyone. "Is this normal?" you scream to Benedict over the total chaos. "Completely normal!" he screams back, while trying to separate the fighting warriors with a rusty saw. This is how medicine works. At 6 p.m., by divine miracle, or pure statistical chance, 3 good things happen simultaneously. 1. Lady Brunhilde gives birth to a healthy baby, despite all medieval methods. 2. The warriors stop fighting because they became too weak from losing blood. 3. The chickens get tired of attacking patients and leave the hospital on their own. Total success, shouts Benedict triumphantly, like he personally orchestrated each positive result. At 7 p.m., you take stock of the medical apocalypse. Wounded warriors, 15 treated, 8 conscious survivors, cursed peasants, 20 treated, 12 still know their own names, various emergencies, 10 treated, results varying between better and worse than before. Noble births, 1 performed, mother and baby alive, miraculously. Exorcised chickens, 6 escaped, 2 stayed to live in the hospital. Overall survival rate, according to Benedict, an impressive 60%, our best day. 60%. He conveniently ignores that 40% died or ended up worse than when they arrived. At 8 p.m., you finally sit on a pile of dirty straw, completely exhausted, covered in blood, yours and patients, smelling like questionable ointments, and watching two chickens who decided to permanently move into the hospital. "You were exceptional today," declares Benedict proudly. "A true emergency medicine professional." Professional? You spent the day running around like a headless chicken, applying random methods and hoping nobody would die. "Tomorrow," he continues cheerfully, "we'll learn about retirement in medieval medicine." Retirement. Finally, a light at the end of the tunnel of this suicidal career. "Is there retirement for medieval nurses?" you ask hopefully. "Of course," responds Benedict. "We call it natural death." And so, my dear survivor of the medieval medical apocalypse, you discovered it's totally possible to die from overwork, especially when that work consists of applying treatments that hinder more than help, in conditions that look more like a battlefield than a medical environment. At least you survived to tell the story. For now. 14th day on the job, and you still believe you'll one day retire from this profession. What touching and completely misplaced optimism about medieval reality. Today you'll discover that retirement in medieval medicine is a concept as advanced as wireless internet or workers' rights. It simply doesn't exist. The morning starts with you innocently asking Master Benedict about the profession's retirement benefits. He looks at you with that expression mixing pity and amusement, like you just asked about space travel or participatory democracy. "Retirement," he repeats slowly, like the word is from an alien language. "What an interesting concept. Where did you get this crazy idea?" Crazy idea! Wanting to stop working someday is apparently the most revolutionary thought in medieval medicine. Well, I thought that after some years of service, maybe I could stop working and rest, you explain timidly. Benedict laughs so hard he almost chokes on his own saliva. Rest? How hilarious. Medieval nurses don't retire, they achieve transcendence. Transcendence? Yes, when they get too old to work, they transcend to a higher plane of existence, he explains cheerfully. Also known as dying on the job. Dying on the job as a retirement plan. The medieval pension system is surprisingly direct in its brutality. Benedict then shows you the medieval labor code, a yellowed scroll that looks like it was written by someone with serious worker hatred issues. The document is quite clear about employment conditions. Article 1. Nurses work until they die. Article 2. There is no Article 2. What comprehensive and detailed labor legislation! 2 articles that perfectly summarize the medieval professional experience. What about vacation, you ask, still maintaining some hope in medieval humanity? Vacations happen when you get too sick to work, responds Benedict. We call it involuntary medical leave. How long does it last? Until you get better or die. Very simple. Medical leave system based on survival. Either you recover quickly or solve the problem permanently. Benedict then introduces you to the hospital's former employees. A collection of makeshift tombstones in the backyard with epitaphs telling the story of medieval retirement. Here lies Brother Jimmy, worked 30 years, died at 31. Rest in peace, Johnny Bloodletter, retired via bubonic. Plague. Nurse Mary, transcended during a difficult birth. Corporate cemetery. The first medieval pension plan. A free grave in the backyard. How do you calculate retirement time, you ask, genuinely curious about this morbid mathematics? Very scientific, explains Benedict proudly. Life expectancy in medieval nursing careers is 2. 3 years. 2.5 years. You've already exceeded the profession's survival average by more than 15 days. What determines when someone retires? Various causes. He counts cheerfully on his fingers. Generalized infection from dirty instruments, poisoning from experimental medications, accidents with surgical tools, attacks from psychiatric patients, contamination from epidemics, fatal exhaustion, or simply existential resignation. Existential resignation. When medieval medical reality is so absurd that your soul simply decides to leave. Benedict then shows you the Medieval Retirement Preparation Manual, a little 2-page booklet that basically teaches how to write your own epitaph and choose an appropriate location for your future burial. Chapter 1. Choosing your last words. Chapter 2. Distributing your medical instruments. Who inherits your layers? Medieval self-help literature. Preparing professionals for the only guaranteed retirement. What if I want to change careers, you ask, trying to find an exit from this suicidal career? Impossible, declares Benedict. Anyone who enters medieval medicine signs a lifetime contract, literally. He shows you the contract you apparently signed on the first day and don't remember. The employee agrees to work until death do them part from employment. Compulsory lifetime contract. Medieval human resources don't mess around. But what if I just run away? You insist. Then you become a fugitive nurse, explains Benedict. Very dangerous. Fugitive nurses are hunted by the Medieval Medical Guild and forced to return to work. Hunting runaway nurses. Because apparently medieval medicine has its own bounty hunters. During lunch, Benedict introduces you to the hospital's only living retiree, Old Barnaby, a 45-year-old former nurse, who's practically a dinosaur by medieval standards, who managed to retire due to permanent disability. How did you manage to retire? You ask hopefully. Lost an arm in surgery, both legs in an epidemic, half my fingers in various accidents, and an eye treating psychiatric patients, explains Barnaby cheerfully. Now I'm officially too disabled to work. Retirement through total incapacity. You literally need to dismantle your own body to stop working. What's retired life like? Wonderful. I spend the day sitting in this corner, watching current nurses make the same mistakes I made, responds Barnaby. And I get a pension of 1 piece of bread per day. 1 piece of bread per day. The medieval pension system is incredibly generous with its benefits. In the afternoon, Benedict shows you the traditional retirement ceremony, a ritual performed whenever a nurse transcends during work. First, we check if they really died or just fainted from exhaustion, explains Benedict. Scientific method. We poke them with a stick. What if they're just unconscious? We throw cold water and send them back to work. Fainting isn't grounds for retirement. Rigorous work standards. Not even temporary unconsciousness releases you from professional duty. If death is confirmed, continues Benedict, we perform the official ceremony. Read their name aloud. Thank them for services rendered. And bury them in the backyard with a tombstone indicating how many days they managed to survive. And then, we hire the next naive sucker to replace them, he declares cheerfully. The cycle of medieval medical life. Immediate workforce replacement. Medieval human resources has impressive efficiency and turnover. At the end of the day, Benedict presents you with the retirement planning form, a document that basically asks how you want your mortal remains treated. Question 1. Do you prefer to be buried with or without your medical instruments? Question 2. Should your leeches be freed or donated to the next nurse? Question 3. any final message to discourage future candidates for the profession? Funeral planning disguised as pension planning. At least they're honest about career prospects. So there's no form of normal retirement, you ask in final desperation? Well, Benedict hesitates. There's a legend about a medieval nurse who managed to retire alive. Legend? Yes. They say 300 years ago, a nurse named Prudence the Lucky managed to work for 5 whole years without dying, explains Benedict with reverence. When he completed 5 years, the medicine gods were so impressed they turned him into a saint. What happened to him? He became Saint Prudence, protector of medieval nurses. His prayers can reduce your death chances from 99% to 98.5%. 5% reduction in death chance. What a statistically insignificant miracle. And so, my dear deluded soul with retirement prospects, you discovered that medieval medicine offers only one pension plan. Work until you literally drop dead, get buried in the backyard, and hope someone remembers your name for more than a week. At least you have guaranteed lifetime employment, because life's gonna be pretty short anyway. 15th day on the job, and you've officially become a living legend of medieval medicine. Congratulations! You achieved the impossible, surviving 2 entire weeks in a profession where life expectancy is shorter than a mosquito's during pesticide season. Today is the day for philosophical reflections on your epic journey through the wonderful world of medieval nursing. You wake up in the morning and look at yourself in the polished metal mirror, which looks more like a dented plate. The reflection staring back is someone who's been through experiences that defy mental sanity. Glazed eyes of someone who's seen too much. Disheveled hair from 2 weeks of post-traumatic stress. And a slightly crazy smile of someone who survived the impossible. 15 days, you murmur to yourself. 15 days in medieval medical hell. Master Benedict arrives cheerful as always, carrying a bottle of something he calls celebratory wine, but is clearly fermented vinegar with frustrated hopes. "My young hero," he declaims dramatically. "Today we complete 2 weeks of your medical education. Time to evaluate what you've learned." What you've learned? Let's see. You learned that hygiene is optional, that anatomy is based on imagination, that surgery is synonymous with torture, and that the best cure for any disease is removing blood until the patient stops complaining permanently. "First," declares Benedict solemnly, "let's review your diagnostic knowledge." He points to a random patient. Diagnosis. You look at the man who clearly has a simple headache and respond, "Triple demonic possession with excess hot humors, complicated by lunar curse and mathematical spirit invasion." "Perfect," shouts Benedict proudly. "You've completely mastered our scientific methodology." Scientific methodology! You've mastered the art of inventing supernatural explanations for everyday problems. Second test, treatments. Benedict points to a woman with skin rashes. Treatment. Without hesitation, you respond, 2-gallon bloodletting, application of purified horse manure, rotational exorcism, and therapeutic flagellation until she stops itching. "Brilliant!" he exclaims. "You've truly absorbed our teachings." Absorbed! You've become an expert in methods that kill more than cure. During lunch, you take statistical stock of your 2-week career. Patients treated, 347. Patients who improved, 23. Patients who worsened, 198. Patients who transcended, 126. Patients who fled during treatment, 47. Medical instruments lost inside patients, 15. Fugitive leeches, 73. Accidental hospital fires, 4. exorcised chickens. 6. Overall success rate, an impressive 6.6%, declares Benedict triumphantly. Above the national average. 6.6% success. You have better odds rolling dice than practicing medieval medicine. In the afternoon, a surprise arrives. A royal messenger with an official letter sealed with golden wax. Benedict opens it dramatically and reads aloud. By order of His Majesty, King Clueless III, the local hospital is officially recognized as a medieval medical excellence center for its innovative methods and consistent mortality rate. Excellence Center. You won a government award for systematized medical incompetence. And there's more, continues Benedict excitedly. You've been named Exemplary Kingdom Nurse for surviving 2 whole weeks. Exemplary Nurse? Your only merit was not dying. What impressive professional qualification. With the award comes a promotion. You're now officially responsible for training new medieval nurses. In other words, you'll teach other people to do exactly the same wrong things you learned. Your first apprentice arrives tomorrow, announces Benedict. An enthusiastic young man named Innocent Hope. Innocent Hope. What a perfectly appropriate name for someone about to have their medical illusions completely destroyed. During the afternoon, you reflect on the most important lessons from your medieval experience. Lesson 1. Ignorance plus confidence. Medieval medicine. The perfect combination of knowing absolutely nothing about the human body with total conviction that your methods work. Lesson 2. When in doubt, blame demons. Any symptom, any problem, anything you don't understand can be attributed to supernatural interference. It's the universal diagnosis. Lesson 3. Bloodletting solves everything. Headache? Bloodletting? Broken leg? Bloodletting? Depression? Bloodletting. It's like duct tape, but with more death chances. Lesson 4. Hygiene is overrated. Why wash hands when you can accumulate medical experience under your nails? Dirt protects against demons. Lesson 5. Anatomy is flexible. Heart in stomach, lungs in buttocks, brain as air conditioner. Anatomical creativity has no limits. Lesson 6. Rusty. Instruments are more effective. New iron has no experience. Rusty instruments have already treated several patients and absorbed healing properties. Lesson 7. If the patient dies, it was their fault. Patients who don't respond well to treatment are clearly not collaborating adequately with the healing process. At the end of the day, you receive your medieval survival diploma, a stained scroll certifying you managed not to die during 2 weeks of medieval medicine. It's signed by Benedict with ink you suspect is blood, probably from some previous patient. Now you're officially qualified to spread our revolutionary methods, declares Benedict proudly. Go forth and multiply medical ignorance. Multiply ignorance. Your life mission is now to teach other people to be systematically incompetent. As you watch the sunset through the hospital's cracked window, you reflect on the situation's irony. You came seeking medical knowledge and ended up becoming a specialist in methods that defy any logic known to humanity. But there's something strangely liberating about this experience. You discovered it's possible to survive the absurd, that humans are surprisingly resilient, despite medieval medicine's best efforts to prove otherwise, and that sometimes involuntary comedy is the only way to deal with systematic tragedy. Tomorrow, you'll start a new phase. From medieval medicine victim, you've become perpetrator. You'll teach Innocent Hope all the scientific methods you learned. Watch his innocence be methodically destroyed, and continue the infinite cycle of medieval medical incompetence. But at least now you know the truth. Medieval medicine isn't about healing people. It's about surviving the medical system itself. And in that, my dear former apprentice, now promoted to official torturer, you've become a true specialist. Congratulations! You didn't just survive medieval medicine, you became part of it. May God have mercy on your soul and the future patients who will have the misfortune of crossing your path. And so ends your epic journey through the wonderful world of medieval nursing, where ignorance is a virtue, incompetence is a method, and surviving 15 days is a miracle worthy of canonization. Welcome to your new personal hell. Now, as permanent staff. The end. If you were a nurse in the medieval era, you really wouldn't last one day. But if you did, you'd discover the second day is even worse than the first, and so on, in a downward spiral of medical horror that defies any logic known to humanity. Special thanks to the leeches who gave their lives for medieval science, to the patients who involuntarily served as guinea pigs, and to all medieval nurses who died in the line of duty, which was practically all of them. Memorial. This book is dedicated to the memory of all bizarre medical methods that, fortunately, stayed in the past. May we never again see the day when horse manure is considered first-line medication,